Blitzwolf is one of those brands that don't enjoy the kind of hype that other better-known brands such as KZ have when it comes to producing IMs, but the BW ES1 and its two other siblings are worth checking out if you are looking for earphones that offer plenty of value and performance. What is the Graphene earphones? Earphones using graphene offer superb frequency response. The reason for this is down to the graphene diaphragm's simplicity. Most diaphragms/cones must be dampened to prevent undesirable frequency responses. Graphene requires no dampening. This is because graphene is so strong that the diaphragm can be incredibly thin and thus very light. Instead of being artificially dampened, the graphene diaphragm is dampened by the ear itself. Graphene is also very energy efficient, which leads to reduced power consumption. After the disappointing V10, TRN have done their homework and realized that more drivers doesn't necessarily mean better sound. The new V20 are a typical dual-driver hybrid earphones, and yet a properly made one too. The V20 are one of the best sounding and most balanced earphones in my collection, and when considering their price, it's a must-have bargain. Comfort fit. The main issue I had to deal with when I use these earphones is getting a proper seal. I had to play with tips, and rock zircon's ear tips seem to be more appropriate with these earphones, at least for me. If you can't hear the bass properly, that's the reason. Replace the tips. Lows. A warm and quite deep bass response. It's actually much more impressive than what you'll be able to enjoy, unless you find the perfect ear tips. When the seal is right, the bass is beefy and accurate, and never leaks into the mids. I've enjoyed every moment listening to everything from electronic music up to metal, as the bass never seemed to be overwhelming. Mids. Wow. The mids are noticeably emphasized, but this time, in a very good way. Tonal accuracy is highly impressive, and no sibilance can be heard at all times. I truly believe that these are some of the most impressive performers when it comes to mids and vocals, and when you take price into consideration, that is when it becomes really admirable. Highs. Very detailed and crisp. Bright but with a natural tendency. A noticeable pierce on most compositions. Despite the drop between 5 kHz-10 kHz, I can't say that I could notice any missing detail that made my listening experience unfulfilled. I'm actually highly impressed by every aspect of that treble. The highly praised Earphones hi-fi did not disappoint. They may look ordinary and not impressive externally, and the exclusive bundle isn't that cheap, but they hide some of the best drivers you can find for a budget price. If electronic music is not your main thing, and you enjoy more vocal-oriented or even some lighter metal music, these will do wonders for you. Comfort fit. Bulky and blocky. The simplistic design of these earphones doesn't provide any kind of ergonomics, and they might fall out if you use the wrong tips. Be prepared to get alternative ear tips in case the included ones don't suit you, especially if you get the standard bundle. Lows. The bass is very accurate. However, these earphones won't satisfy those who want beefy deep bass. The kicks are punchy and quick, but the sub-bass is mostly non-existent, and the mid-bass is very balanced and calm. The lows are still very enjoyable, even though the highs overwhelm them, especially in dirty electronic music, such as dubstep. Mids. Excellent vocal reproduction. These earphones can be considered bright, so vocals shine, and there's a lot of detail in high-pitched instruments. As the highs are much more pronounced than the lows, the earphones sound their best on medium volume levels. Higher volumes might sound uncomfortable. Highs. Superb highs. Very sharp and crisp, and just a little bit harsh on higher volumes. People with sensitive hearing might find them uncomfortable at first, but given enough time, you will get used and fall in love with the sound of these earphones. One of KZ's flagships, KZ-D9, is up for the test. Honestly, I really don't like overly emphasized highs. Too much definition can be exhausting rather than impressive. However, I won't call them bad earphones because of that, because they are quite high quality when it comes to their extraordinary sound signature. Lows. Although the sub-bass is pretty minimal, it's pretty quick and precise. These earphones aren't the bass head's dream, but they offer some of the best quality bass among KZ's products. The bass can be considered balanced. They leave room for the mids and highs to shine, thus are intended for a more general audience, and especially for vocal-oriented music. Mids. Just like the highs, the mids and vocals are very defined, crisp and dominant. I find them slightly too bright, even slightly sibilant for my ears, but in this specific case it's really a matter of personal preference, and I cannot ignore the quality of these mids. Highs. The highs are very defined and you can hear every silent chime and wail, but it may also cause us discomfort because they are so loud and sharp that sensitive ears will find them too bright to handle. The ZS3 is essentially identical to ZS3, with a slight bump in the upper treble that makes the piercing issue a bit more prominent. The slight difference doesn't warrant a dedicated review, so the review is identical to ZS3. Comfort fit. I always find the memory wires to be extremely annoying. It takes too much time and effort to position the earphones properly into the ear, and even when they're inside, they don't sit flat against the ear and stick out a bit and are very easily pulled out. Lows. The bass is very balanced and controlled, but it's also underwhelming and overrun by the super bright highs. It's more than enough for contemporary vocal-oriented music, but for electronic music this is just not enough. Depth-wise, they are similar to ZS5 but slightly shallower. Mids. The mids are highly impressive, and actually very similar to ZS5, to the point where it's really hard to tell them apart. The details is quite extraordinary, but I feel like the ZS5 manages to pinpoint micro detail quite better than ES3. Along with the great vocal clarity, comes some unsatisfying pierced afflects vocals, especially female vocals, and high-pitched instruments. Highs. The highs are very sharp and crisp. They are also extremely piercing. Depending on how sensitive your hearing is, you might feel discomfort and fatigue after using these earphones for a while, especially if you are listening on medium/high volumes. Superb clarity and tonally accurate, except that the treble is very bright, far brighter than what I would consider enjoyable. KZ has become a serious brand, and their latest ZS5 sound quality absolutely blows away most of the earphones, if not all of them. They have deep bass, yet aren't boomy. The mids and highs are not recessed at all and are highly detailed. My only complaints would be the design, especially from a comfort standpoint, the materials used for the housing, and the included cable, which is very basic but better than the common gut-looking cable KZ have been using. However, for a small extra fee, you can get yourself a much better cable. Putting it short, these are one of those earphones you just must have. Sometimes you see a pair of earphones and you think, meh, just one of the many useless earphones this brand has. But with these earphones, it was plain shocking. They are very sensitive, loud, and amazingly bass-heavy earphones. I don't know what kind of driver they put inside that thing, but it's powerful. Not precise, but powerful. Comfort fit. I was having a hard time fitting these into my ears. The M-sized tips are just a bit too small and the L-sized generic tips are too big. Had to use the L-sized black tips that came with the Car i1, which fit perfectly. These earphones aren't too bulky or heavy, so once you fit the tips, they will stay in your ears, no problem there. Also, the magnetic adsorption makes it really comfortable to just join the earphones and wear them on your neck while they aren't in use. Lows. These earphones were designed with a boomy bass in mind. The bass is so powerful and overwhelming that you barely care about the mids and highs, especially if you are listening to electronic music. These earphones are just plain fun to listen to. Mids. The vocals, although you can hear them perfectly, are slightly pushed back. The super deep bass has a tendency to leak into the mids, but it's just a side effect of having an extreme V-shaped sound signature. Highs. The highs are loud and sharp, sometimes may seem too sharp, but they are quite precise and clear. These earphones were designed for bass-heavy electronic music in mind, so expect a V-shaped sound here, emphasized low-end and high-end.